The text message arrived at 11:47 p.m., glowing like a neon sign against the darkness of our bedroom. If you don't like something, then let's get a divorce. I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas. My wife Alicia was at another nightclub, her third girls' night this month, and apparently she'd grown tired of my complaints about her newfound hobby of disappearing into bass-heavy darkness every weekend. My name is Greg Sloan, I'm 38 years old, and I manage 3 restaurants in our mid-sized Ohio town. I'm not the jealous type, never have been. But when your wife starts treating nightclubs like they're part of her job description, even the most trusting husband begins to wonder what exactly she's dancing to. It started 6 months ago. Alicia, my wife of 12 years and mother of our 2 daughters, suddenly developed an insatiable appetite for late-night entertainment. At first, I thought it was healthy. She'd been stuck in the house during the pandemic, working her event planning business from home, dealing with virtual birthday parties and Zoom weddings. When things opened up again, she deserved to blow off steam, but blowing off steam turned into a weekly ritual, then twice weekly, then every time her best friend Susie called with another emergency girls' night. Susie Martinez had been Alicia's partner in crime since middle school, a wild, manipulative woman who treated marriage like a suggestion rather than a commitment. "Greg, you're being controlling," Alicia would say whenever I asked her to stay home. "I'm not your property. I need to live my life." Live her life. As if our life together, the house we'd built, the kids we were raising, the 12 years of marriage we'd invested, somehow didn't count as living. Tonight had been different. Tonight she'd looked me dead in the eye while applying her makeup and said, "Don't wait up. I might be very late." "How late?" I'd asked. "As late as I want to be." That's when I'd made the mistake of asking her to reconsider, to maybe choose a quiet night at home with her family for once. Her response had been swift and cold. "If you don't like it, you can always file for divorce." Now, staring at her text message, I realized she'd meant every word. I got dressed. The Velvet Room was the kind of nightclub that tried too hard to be sophisticated but ended up looking like a strip mall trying to cosplay as Las Vegas. Purple neon, overpriced drinks, and a dance floor packed with people desperately trying to recapture their 20s. I found a spot at the bar where I could see everything but stay hidden in the shadows. The hood of my jacket was up, my phone was ready, and my heart was pounding like it wanted to escape my chest. It didn't take long to spot Alicia. She was impossible to miss in her tight black dress, the one she'd claimed was just comfortable, when I'd commented on how revealing it was. She was on the dance floor, moving with a confidence I hadn't seen in years, smiling too wide, laughing too loud. And she wasn't alone. The man dancing with her was tall, muscular, with the kind of cocky smile that screamed trouble. His hands were on her waist, pulling her close, and she wasn't pulling away. In fact, she was leaning into him, her body pressed against his like they'd done this dance 100 times before. I recognized him. Dominic Hayes, Dom to his friends. He worked at the auto parts factory, spent his free time at the gym, and was married to Susie, which meant my wife was grinding against her best friend's husband while Susie cheered them on from the sidelines. My hands were steady as I pulled out my phone and started recording. The video quality was perfect, clear enough to see every touch, every whisper, every moment that destroyed 12 years of marriage. I watched through my phone screen as Dom's hands moved lower, as Alicia threw her head back and laughed at something he whispered in her ear. I watched as she stood on her tiptoes and kissed him, not a quick peck, but a real kiss, the kind she used to give me when we were dating, the kind she hadn't given me in months. I recorded for 3 minutes, capturing every angle, every intimate moment. When Dom's hand slipped under the hem of her dress, I finally had enough evidence to last several lifetimes. I typed out a message and attached the video. "Divorce is waiting at home." I hit send and watched as she felt her phone buzz in her purse. Watched as she pulled it out, still laughing from whatever Dom had just said. Watched as her face went from flushed excitement to absolute horror in the span of 2 seconds. She looked around frantically as if she could spot me in the crowd, but I was already walking toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear her shouting something to Susie, could hear the panic in her voice as she pushed through the crowd. By the time I got home, I'd already made 2 phone calls. The first was to my best friend Richard, who happened to be a lawyer. The second was to his wife Nikki, who agreed to come over as a witness to whatever was about to happen. They were both waiting in my living room when Alicia's car screeched into the driveway 23 minutes later. Alicia burst through the front door like a hurricane, her makeup smeared, her hair disheveled, her chest heaving from panic and the sprint from her car to our porch. She stopped dead when she saw Richard and Nikki sitting calmly on our couch, professional and composed. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, her voice cracking with desperation. "This," I said from my position by the fireplace, is what divorce looks like when you're not the one who gets to control the narrative. Richard stood up, straightening his tie with the practiced ease of a man who delivered bad news professionally for 15 years. He was tall, graying at the temples, and had the kind of calm demeanor that made people trust him immediately. Tonight, that calm was about to destroy my wife's world. "Mrs. Sloane," Richard said, extending a manila folder toward her, "these are divorce papers. They've been filed with the court as of 9 p.m. this evening." Alicia stared at the folder like it might bite her. "This is insane. Greg, we can talk about this. Whatever you think you saw—" "I didn't think I saw anything," I interrupted. "I recorded what I saw, high definition, great audio quality. Your phone call to Dom at 7:30, where you told him you couldn't wait to feel his hands on you again, came through particularly clear." The color drained from her face. She'd forgotten about that call, made from our kitchen while I was supposedly in the shower. I'd heard every word through the baby monitor we'd never removed from the hallway. "You were spying on me," she whispered. "I was protecting myself," I corrected. "From a wife who thinks marriage is optional and fidelity is a suggestion." Nikki, a sharp-eyed woman with zero tolerance for drama, pulled out her own folder. "Alicia, you might want to sit down. We need to discuss some practical matters." "I'm not sitting down in my own house." "Actually," Richard said gently, "it's not your house anymore. Greg filed for legal separation 3 hours ago. As the primary breadwinner and mortgage holder, he has the right to ask you to leave the premises immediately." Alicia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "You can't throw me out. I live here. My kids live here." "Your kids live here," I agreed. "You've been living at nightclubs. That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, and the sound was bitter even to my own ears. "Was it fair when you told me I was being paranoid? When you called me controlling for asking you to spend one weekend night at home? When you kissed another man while wearing the wedding ring I saved 6 months to buy?" She was crying now, black mascara streaming down her cheeks like war paint in the rain. "It didn't mean anything. Dom and I, we were just dancing. People dance, Greg. It's not a crime." Nikki held up her phone, showing the video I'd sent to Richard's email. "This is what you call dancing?" Alicia lunged for the phone, but Nikki was quicker, pulling it back and standing up. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. Assault is a crime, even if adultery isn't." The front door opened, and Susie Martinez stumbled in without knocking, drunk and furious. She was wearing the same type of tight dress as Alicia, but in red instead of black. Her dark hair was wild, and her lipstick was smeared across her chin. "What the hell did you do to my friend, you controlling psycho?" she screamed at me. "I gave her exactly what she asked for," I replied calmly. "A divorce." "You can't just throw her out. She has rights." Richard cleared his throat. "Actually, Mrs. Martinez, you're trespassing. This is a private residence, and you weren't invited inside." "I don't give a damn about—" "Susie, stop," Alicia said weakly. "Just stop." But Susie was on a roll, probably fueled by whatever they'd been drinking at the club. "This is all because of your jealousy, isn't it? Because Alicia is beautiful and fun, and you're just some boring restaurant manager who can't keep his wife happy?" "Is that what you told her?" I asked, genuinely curious. "That this was my fault?" "It is your fault. You drove her away with your controlling behavior. I drove her away by asking her to come home before midnight on a school night. You drove her away by being boring." The front door opened again, and this time Dom Hayes walked in like he owned the place. He was still wearing his club clothes, tight jeans, and a black t-shirt that showed off the muscles he was so proud of. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and he had the kind of swagger that screamed main character syndrome. "Alicia, baby, what's wrong?" he said, completely ignoring the rest of us. "Baby," in my living room, in front of my lawyer. Richard was already recording on his phone. "Mr. Hayes, I presume?" Dom finally noticed the rest of us and had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "Who are you?" "I'm Mrs. Sloane's divorce attorney. And you are?" "I'm a friend." "A friend who calls married women baby?" Dom's chest puffed out, and I could see him calculating whether he could intimidate his way out of this situation. He was bigger than me, stronger, and probably used to solving problems with his fists. "Look, man," he said, turning to me, "this doesn't have to get ugly." "You're right," I agreed. "It doesn't." I walked to the front door and held it open. "Which is why you're going to leave. Now." "I'm not going anywhere without Alicia." "Yes, you are." Dom took a step toward me, his hands clenching into fists. "You want to try to make me?" I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Dom, you're standing in my living room, admitting to an affair with my wife, in front of 2 lawyers who are recording everything you say. If you touch me, it's assault. If you refuse to leave, it's trespassing. If you keep talking, you're just giving us more evidence for court." He stopped moving toward me, confusion replacing aggression on his face. "But here's the thing," I continued. "I don't want to call the police. I don't want to press charges. I just want you to walk out that door and never come back. And if I don't," I pulled out my phone and showed him the video I'd taken at the club. "Then this goes to your boss at the factory, and to your wife, and to the Facebook page for our neighborhood, and to the group chat for your gym." Dom's face went pale. "You wouldn't. Try me." For a long moment, we stared at each other. Then Dom's shoulders sagged, and he looked at Alicia with something that might have been regret. "I'm sorry, babe. I can't. This is too much drama for me." And just like that, he walked out the door, leaving Alicia standing in the middle of our living room, abandoned by her knight in shining armor the moment things got complicated. "Dom!" she called after him, but the only response was the sound of his truck starting in the driveway. Susie was staring at the closed door in disbelief. "He just left." "They always do," Nikki said matter-of-factly. "Men like that are only interested in the fun parts. When reality shows up, they disappear." Alicia collapsed onto the couch, her head in her hands. "This is a nightmare." "No," I said quietly. "This is consequences." The next morning, I woke up in the guest bedroom to the sound of Alicia's car starting in the driveway. She'd spent the night in our bedroom. I'd allowed that much for the sake of the kids, but now she was gone before breakfast, probably to cry on Susie's shoulder and figure out her next move. Our daughters, Emma and Sophie, ages 10 and 8, were eating cereal at the kitchen table when I came downstairs. They knew something was wrong, kids always do, but they didn't know how wrong yet. "Where's Mom?" Emma asked, not looking up from her phone. "She had to leave early for work," I said, which was technically true if you considered damage control a form of employment. Sophie, always the more perceptive of the two, studied my face with those serious brown eyes she'd inherited from her mother. "Are you and Mom fighting?" I sat down across from them, trying to figure out how to explain that their mother had blown up our family for the sake of dancing with another woman's husband. "We're having some grown-up problems," I said finally. "But whatever happens, you need to know that we both love you very much, and that's never going to change." Emma finally looked up from her phone. "Are you getting divorced?" The question hit me like a punch to the stomach, even though I'd been expecting it. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for, and mine were no exception. "We're figuring things out," I said, "but right now we need to focus on getting you two ready for school." After I dropped the girls off at Jefferson Elementary, I drove to my office at Romano's, the flagship restaurant of the 3 I managed. It was a mid-scale Italian place that served decent food to families who wanted to feel fancy without breaking the bank. My assistant manager, Kelly, was already there, setting up for the lunch rush. She was 26, efficient, and had the kind of no-nonsense attitude that made her invaluable in the restaurant business. "You look like hell," she said by way of greeting. "Thanks. That's exactly what I was going for." "Rough night?" I considered how much to tell her. Kelly had worked for me for 3 years, and she'd met Alicia at company parties. She'd also been the one to cover for me yesterday when I'd left early to meet with Richard about the divorce papers. "Alicia and I are separating," I said finally. Kelly stopped counting register money and looked at me with genuine concern. "Greg, I'm sorry. Are you okay?" "I will be. Do you want to talk about it?" "Not really, but I might need some flexibility with my schedule for the next few weeks. Lawyers, court dates, that kind of thing." "Of course. Whatever you need." My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Call me when you get a chance. We need to discuss strategy." I stepped into my office and dialed his number. "How are you holding up?" he asked without preamble. "I've been better. What's the strategy?" "Documentation. We need to establish a pattern of neglect and infidelity. The video from last night is good, but we need more." "More?" "Phone records, credit card statements, witness testimony. Anything that shows she's been prioritizing her social life over her family responsibilities." I thought about all the nights she'd come home after midnight, all the weekends she'd spent getting ready for another girls' night, all the times she'd been too tired or too hungover to help with homework or household chores. "I can get you phone records," I said, "and I've been keeping track of her nights out in my calendar." "Good. What about witnesses?" "To what?" "Neighbors who've seen her coming home late, friends who've heard her talking about her nightclub activities, other parents who've noticed her absence from school events." I thought about the last PTA meeting where I'd sat alone while other couples discussed fundraising plans. I thought about Emma's soccer games, where I'd been the only parent cheering from the sidelines. I thought about Sophie's school play, where Alicia had shown up 20 minutes late, reeking of perfume and claiming she'd been stuck in traffic. I can get witnesses, I said. There's something else. Nikki did some digging on social media last night. Your wife's been posting pictures from these nightclub adventures, pictures that show her drinking heavily, dancing inappropriately, staying out until all hours. She posted evidence of her own infidelity? Not exactly infidelity, but definitely evidence of a lifestyle that's incompatible with responsible parenting. We can use it to argue for primary custody. Primary custody. The words hit me like a revelation. I'd been so focused on the divorce itself that I hadn't fully considered the custody battle that would follow. Richard, I want full custody. Greg, that's a big ask. Courts usually prefer joint custody arrangements. Not when one parent is more interested in nightclubs than in their children's bedtime stories. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Okay, but if we're going for full custody, we need to be absolutely bulletproof. No mistakes, no gaps in documentation, no opportunities for her to claim you're being vindictive. What do I need to do? Keep being the perfect father, document everything, and whatever you do, don't let her provoke you into doing something stupid. After I hung up, I sat in my office chair and stared at the family photo on my desk. It had been taken last Christmas, all four of us smiling in front of the tree. Alicia looked beautiful and happy, her arms around the girls, her head leaning against my shoulder. It was amazing how quickly a photograph could become a lie. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Alicia's number. Hello? Greg, we need to talk. Her voice was hoarse, probably from crying. I think we said everything we needed to say last night. Please, I know you're angry, but we can work this out. For the girls. The girls are exactly why we can't work this out. That's not fair. Alicia, you've spent more time at nightclubs in the past 6 months than you have at our daughter's school events. You've missed bedtime stories, homework help, and family dinners because you were too busy dancing with other women's husbands. Tell me how any of that is fair to Emma and Sophie. I made mistakes, but that doesn't mean our marriage is over. You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. Every single time you walked out that door, you chose someone else over your family. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain to me how kissing Dom Hayes was about anything other than choosing him over me. Silence on the other end of the line. I thought so, I said. Alicia, I'm not angry anymore. I'm done. There's a difference. What about the girls? What about them? They need their mother. They need a mother who puts them first. When you figure out how to be that person, we can discuss visitation. Visitation? Greg, you can't keep my children away from me. I'm not keeping them away from you. I'm protecting them from the version of you that thinks nightclubs are more important than family. She was crying again, but this time it sounded different. Less panicked, more desperate. Please, she whispered. Don't do this. You already did it, I said, and hung up. 2 weeks later, the real war began. Alicia had moved in with Susie temporarily, and the two of them had apparently spent their time plotting my destruction. It started with a call from Emma's school. Mr. Sloan, this is Principal Harrison. We need to discuss a concerning conversation I had with your wife this morning. I was in the middle of inventory at Romano's, but I stepped into my office and closed the door. What kind of conversation? She came in to update Emma's emergency contact information and mentioned that you've been struggling with anger issues. She seemed very concerned about the girl's safety. My blood pressure spiked. Principal Harrison, my wife and I are going through a divorce. I think she might be trying to create problems where none exist. I understand divorce can be difficult, Mr. Sloan, but I have to take any safety concerns seriously. Of course. What exactly did she tell you? She said you've been drinking heavily, staying out late, and that she's worried about your emotional stability. I almost laughed. The projection was so blatant, it was almost comical. Almost. Principal Harrison, would you like to see the documentation of my wife's nightclub activities? Or the video of her kissing another man? Because I think you'll find that any concerns about emotional stability are misplaced. There was a long pause. Mr. Sloan, perhaps we should schedule a meeting to discuss the situation properly. I think that's a good idea. Can my lawyer attend? If you feel that's necessary. After I hung up, I called Richard immediately. She's trying to paint me as unstable, I told him. Going to the kids' school, probably talking to neighbors, building a case that I'm the problem. Classic deflection strategy, Richard said. Don't worry about it. We have documentation of her behavior, and we can easily disprove any claims about your stability. What about character witnesses? That's actually a good idea. Who would speak for you? I thought about it. Kelly had seen me handle stressful situations at work with professionalism. The other parents at school knew me as the reliable one who showed up to every event. My neighbors had watched me mow my lawn, shovel their driveways, and organize block parties for years. I can get plenty of character witnesses, I said. The question is, can she? That evening, I was helping Sophie with her math homework when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Dom Hayes standing on my porch, looking nervous. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. What do you want? Look, man, I think we got off on the wrong foot. The wrong foot would be you staying away from my wife. What you did was adultery. It wasn't that serious. We were just having fun. Fun? Right. I leaned against the doorframe, studying his face. Let me guess. Alicia sent you here to try to smooth things over. She's really torn up about this whole thing. She loves you, man. She loves your family. She has a funny way of showing it. People make mistakes. People make mistakes, I agreed. But they also face consequences for those mistakes. What's your point? Dom shifted uncomfortably. Maybe you could consider, I don't know, couples therapy or something? Instead of blowing up your whole family? Dom, let me ask you something. Are you planning to leave your wife for Alicia? What? No, man, it's not like that. So you're planning to keep her as a side piece while you stay married to Susie? It's complicated. No, it's really not. You want to have your cake and eat it too, and you're upset that I'm not playing along. Look, I'm trying to be reasonable here. Reasonable would have been keeping your hands off my wife. What you're doing now is damage control. I started to close the door, but Dom put his hand against it. You're making a mistake, he said, and there was something threatening in his voice. Are you threatening me? On my own property? In front of my children? Dom realized his mistake immediately. No, man. You just meant that you're used to intimidating people to get what you want. But I'm not most people, Dom. I'm a man who has nothing left to lose, which makes me very dangerous. You don't scare me, I smiled. I should. That night, after the girls were asleep, I sat in my home office and planned my counterattack. If Alicia wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too. The difference was that I had the moral high ground and better documentation. I started with social media. Alicia's Instagram account was public, and it was a treasure trove of evidence. Photos from nightclubs, pictures of drinks, videos of her dancing with various men. She'd been documenting her own infidelity for months without realizing it. I screenshot everything and sent it to Richard with a note, Exhibit A through Z. Then I called my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, an elderly widow who lived next door and had always been fond of our girls. Mrs. Patterson, it's Greg Sloan. I'm sorry to call so late. Oh, hello, dear. Is everything all right? Actually, I wanted to ask you about something. You know Alicia and I are having some marital problems. I've noticed she's been out quite a lot lately. I hope you two can work things out. Mrs. Patterson, if someone asked you about my character, what would you say? I'd say you're one of the finest young men I've ever known. Always helping with groceries, shoveling my driveway, bringing the girls over to visit. Why do you ask? There might be a custody hearing, and I wanted to make sure you'd be comfortable speaking honestly about what you've observed. Of course, dear, anything you need. I made similar calls to 3 other neighbors, 2 parents from the girls' school, and my boss at the restaurant group. By the time I went to bed, I had a list of 12 people willing to testify to my character and parenting abilities. The next morning, I dropped the girls off at school and noticed Alicia's car in the parking lot. She was standing near the main entrance, talking to a group of other mothers. When she saw me, she waved like nothing had happened. I walked over to the group, which included Jennifer Walsh, the PTA president, and 2 other women I recognized from school events. Good morning, ladies, I said pleasantly. Oh, Greg, Jennifer said with obvious discomfort. How are you holding up? I'm doing well, thanks. Just focusing on the girls and making sure they feel stable during this transition. I could see Alicia tense up beside me. That's so important, said one of the other mothers. Divorce is so hard on children. It is, I agreed. But I think kids are resilient as long as they have at least one parent who's consistently present and reliable. Alicia's face flushed red, but she couldn't say anything without making a scene in front of the other parents. I stood there for a second, the cafe door already swinging shut behind me. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain from the night before. I didn't look back. At work, the day passed in a blur of emails and meetings. My phone stayed silent. No texts from Alicia, no calls from the school. That in itself was unusual. She usually sent something passive-aggressive by noon, a photo of the girls at breakfast with a caption like, "They miss their mommy." Today, nothing. When I picked up Emma and Sophie from after-school care, they were their usual bubbly selves. Emma chattered about a science project. Sophie clutched a drawing of our house with 3 stick figures and a dog we didn't own. Neither asked about Mommy. They'd stopped asking weeks ago. That evening, as I helped them with homework and made spaghetti, my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer, Mark. Greg, Alicia's attorney, just filed an emergency motion. She's claiming you're alienating the children and wants temporary primary custody. She's alleging you're unstable, that your public confrontation at the school was emotional abuse. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. She threatened to take the girls away if I didn't take her back. I walked out of the coffee shop. Mark sighed. I know. We've got the recording from your phone. Yes, I saved it. Her exact words. I'll make sure you regret it. I'll take the girls, and you'll never see them again. That's coercive, not parental concern. We'll counter with the evidence of her neglect. The credit card statements showing nights out while you handled bedtime, the text to her friends bragging about finally living, the fact she hasn't paid child support since the separation. I rubbed my temples. How long until the hearing? 2 weeks. We'll request supervised visitation for her until then. The judge won't like the timing. She filed right after your conversation. I glanced at the girls, now sprawled on the living room floor with coloring books. Sophie looked up and grinned. Dad, can we have ice cream tonight? Absolutely, I said. Extra sprinkles. The next 2 weeks were a gauntlet. Alicia showed up at the school twice, tearful, hugging the girls dramatically in front of teachers and parents. She posted vague, victim-coded updates on social media. Sometimes the hardest thing is walking away from what you thought was forever. Mutual friends reached out, asking if I was okay, implying I was the villain. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. At the hearing, the courtroom was small and cold. Alicia sat with her lawyer, composed, mascara perfect. She took the stand first, voice trembling as she described how heartbroken she was, how she'd made mistakes but wanted her family back. She painted me as vindictive, controlling, unwilling to forgive. Then Mark played the audio from the coffee shop. Her own words echoed through the speakers. If you do this, I'll make sure you regret it. I'll take the girls, and you'll never see them again. The judge's expression hardened. When Alicia tried to explain, I was emotional. I didn't mean it. The judge cut her off. Threatening to weaponize children is not emotion. It's manipulation. I took the stand next. I kept it simple. The years of her growing distance, the nights she came home smelling of cologne that wasn't mine, the way the girls had started asking why Mommy didn't read to them anymore. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The judge ruled in my favor. Temporary custody remained with me. Alicia would have supervised visitation every other weekend. No overnight stays until she completed a parenting course and individual counseling. Outside the courthouse, she approached me while the girls waited with my sister in the car. You won, she said, voice flat. I didn't want to win, Alicia. I wanted you to be the mother they deserve. You chose something else. She looked away. I'm still their mother. You'll always be their mother, but right now you're not acting like one. She didn't reply. She just walked to her car and drove away. 6 months later, life had settled into a new rhythm. The girls thrived. Emma joined the school soccer team. Sophie started piano lessons. I met someone new, slowly, carefully, a woman named Claire who volunteered at the animal shelter and laughed at my terrible dad jokes. She didn't push. She just showed up. Alicia completed the required courses and started supervised visits. The first few were awkward. The girls were polite but distant. Over time, they warmed slightly, but the bond wasn't what it once was. She'd have to rebuild it on her own terms, not mine. One evening, as I tucked Sophie in, she asked, Will Mommy ever live with us again? I brushed hair from her forehead. I don't know, sweetheart. But whatever happens, you and Emma will always have me, and you'll always have each other. She nodded, satisfied, and closed her eyes. I turned off the light and stood in the doorway, watching their peaceful breathing. The house was quiet, the way it should be, full of love, not lies. I'd lost a marriage. I'd gained something better, a family that trusted me, a life built on honesty, and the certainty that I'd done the right thing. Sometimes walking away is the bravest choice you can make. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late October. I arrived at the courthouse wearing my best suit, carrying a folder thick with documentation, and feeling more confident than I had in months. Richard met me on the courthouse steps. You ready for this? I've been ready since the night I followed her to that club. Remember, stay calm no matter what she says. Let the evidence speak for itself. We walked into the courtroom where Alicia was already seated with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Vance who specialized in high-conflict divorces. Alicia looked nervous, which was unusual for her. She was wearing a conservative dress and minimal makeup, clearly trying to project an image of responsible motherhood. Judge Margaret Coleman was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd been handling family court cases for over 20 years. She had a reputation for seeing through manipulation and focusing on what was best for the children involved. "This is a custody hearing for Emma and Sophie Sloan," Judge Coleman announced. "I've reviewed the preliminary filings from both parties. Mrs. Vance, you may present your client's case first." Patricia Vance stood up with the confidence of someone who'd won cases like this before. "Your Honor, Mrs. Sloan is a devoted mother who has been the primary caregiver for her daughters throughout their lives. She has temporarily relocated due to her husband's increasingly controlling and unstable behavior, but she maintains that joint custody is in the best interests of the children." "What evidence do you have of unstable behavior?" Judge Coleman asked. "Mrs. Sloan will testify that her husband has become paranoid, possessive, and prone to angry outbursts. He has attempted to isolate her from her friends, monitor her activities, and control her social life to an unhealthy degree." I felt my jaw clench, but Richard placed a warning hand on my arm. "Furthermore," Vance continued, "Mr. Sloan has filed for divorce in a vindictive manner, attempting to punish Mrs. Sloan for maintaining friendships and social activities that he disapproves of." Judge Coleman looked at Richard. "Mr. Foster, how does your client respond to these allegations?" Richard stood up calmly. "Your Honor, we have extensive documentation that Mrs. Sloan has been neglecting her parental responsibilities in favor of a lifestyle that is incompatible with effective parenting. We also have evidence of infidelity and deception." "What kind of evidence?" "Video evidence of Mrs. Sloan engaging in intimate physical contact with a man who is not her husband, phone records showing inappropriate communications, social media posts documenting excessive drinking and frequent nightclub attendance, and testimony from multiple witnesses regarding her pattern of absence from family responsibilities." Judge Coleman raised an eyebrow. "Video evidence?" Richard nodded and handed a tablet to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. This was taken at a nightclub called the Velvet Room on the evening Mrs. Sloan sent her husband a text message suggesting divorce. I watched as Judge Coleman viewed the video, her expression growing more serious with each passing second. When she finished, she looked at Alicia with obvious disapproval. "Mrs. Sloan, is this you in the video?" Alicia's lawyer whispered something to her before she answered. "Yes, Your Honor, but I can explain." "I'm sure you can. Mr. Foster, what other evidence do you have?" For the next hour, Richard methodically presented our case. Phone records showing Alicia's late-night calls to Dom, credit card statements proving she'd spent hundreds of dollars at nightclubs while claiming we couldn't afford family activities, screenshots of her Instagram posts showing her drinking and partying while the girls were at home with me. Then came the character witnesses. Mrs. Patterson testified that she'd rarely seen Alicia home in the evenings over the past 6 months, but that I was consistently present, helping with homework and bedtime routines. Kelly testified that I'd never missed work due to drinking or emotional instability, but that I'd frequently had to leave early to handle parental responsibilities when Alicia was unavailable. Jennifer Walsh, the PTA president, testified that Alicia had missed the last 4 PTA meetings and 3 school fundraising events, while I had attended all of them. By the time Richard finished presenting our case, Alicia looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. "Mrs. Vance," Judge Coleman said, "does your client wish to testify on her own behalf?" Patricia Vance looked at Alicia, who shook her head slightly. "No, Your Honor. We believe the evidence speaks for itself." "Very well, Mr. Sloan. Would you like to make a statement?" I stood up, my heart pounding. "Your Honor, I don't want to punish my wife. I want to protect my daughters. They deserve a stable home environment with a parent who prioritizes their needs above personal entertainment. I've been that parent for 12 years, and I'm prepared to continue being that parent for as long as they need me." Judge Coleman nodded and made some notes. "I'm going to take a brief recess to review all the evidence. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. During the recess, I stepped outside for some fresh air. Alicia followed me, looking desperate. "Greg, please, don't take my children away from me." "I'm not taking them away from you. I'm giving them the stability they deserve. I can change. I can be better." "You've had 6 months to be better. Instead, you got worse." "What if I agree to supervised visitation? What if I go to counseling?" I looked at her, this woman who had once been my everything, and felt nothing but sadness. "Alicia, if you want to be part of their lives, you'll have to prove that you've actually changed. Not just promise to change, but actually do it." "How?" "That's not my problem to solve anymore." When we reconvened, Judge Coleman had made her decision. After reviewing all the evidence presented today, I'm awarding primary custody of Emma and Sophie Sloan to their father, Gregory Sloan. Mrs. Sloan will have supervised visitation every other weekend, with the possibility of expanded visitation after 6 months if she can demonstrate consistent, responsible behavior. Alicia broke down crying, but I felt only relief. Furthermore, Judge Coleman continued, Mrs. Sloan is ordered to attend parenting classes and substance abuse counseling before her visitation rights can be reinstated. Your Honor, Patricia Vance objected, there's no evidence of substance abuse. There's evidence of excessive drinking documented on social media, Counselor. I'd rather err on the side of caution when children's welfare is at stake. As we left the courthouse, Richard clapped me on the shoulder. You did it. We did it, I corrected. Thank you for everything. What's next? Next, I go pick up my daughters from school and tell them they're coming home with me, permanently. That evening, I sat Emma and Sophie down in our living room and explained the judge's decision. They took it better than I'd expected. Kids are more perceptive than adults give them credit for, and they'd already figured out that something was seriously wrong with their mother's behavior. Does this mean Mom doesn't love us anymore? Sophie asked. No, sweetheart. It means Mom is going through some problems right now, and she needs time to figure things out. But she loves you very much, and so do I. Will we still see her? Emma asked. Yes, but not as often as before. And when you do see her, there will be other adults around to make sure everything goes smoothly. Like babysitters? Sort of like that. Sophie curled up next to me on the couch. Daddy, are you sad about Mom? I thought about it for a moment. I'm sad about what happened, but I'm not sad about what comes next. We're going to be just fine, the three of us. And for the first time in months, I actually believed it. 6 months later, I was cleaning out the garage when I found a box of old photo albums, pictures of our wedding, our honeymoon, the girls' first steps, family vacations, Christmas mornings, a lifetime of memories that now felt like artifacts from someone else's life. I was about to put the box in storage when Emma found me. What are those, Dad? Old pictures of our family. She sat down next to me and started flipping through one of the albums. Mom looks really happy here. She was happy. We all were. Do you miss her? I miss the person she used to be, but that person has been gone for a long time. Maybe she'll come back someday. Maybe, but we can't wait around hoping for that to happen. We have to build our own happiness. Emma nodded seriously, with the wisdom that children sometimes possess. I think we're doing a pretty good job of that. Yeah, I said, putting my arm around her. I think we are too. As for Alicia, she completed her court-ordered counseling and parenting classes. She sees the girls every other weekend now, and she's been consistent about showing up sober and on time. She moved out of Susie's place and got her own apartment. She's even started dating someone new, a divorced father who apparently shares her love of nightlife. Dom and Susie got divorced too, though not because of the affair. Turns out Dom had been cheating with multiple women, and Susie finally got tired of being married to a man who treated fidelity as optional. The last I heard, Dom was living with his mother and working part-time at a gym. Sometimes I wonder if things could have been different, if I'd been a better husband, if I'd paid more attention to the warning signs, if I'd fought harder to save our marriage before it was too late. But then I remember that marriage is a partnership, and partnerships only work when both people are equally committed to making them work. I was willing to fight for our family. Alicia was more interested in fighting for her right to party. In the end, she got exactly what she asked for, a divorce. And I got exactly what I needed, my daughters, my self-respect, and a chance to build something better. The girls and I have dinner together every night now. We do homework at the kitchen table, watch movies on Friday nights, and take weekend trips to places Alicia always said were too boring. Emma made honor roll last semester, and Sophie joined the school choir. They're thriving in ways they never did when their mother's chaos was the center of our family's universe. I've started dating again, nothing serious yet, but I'm open to the possibility of finding someone who understands that family comes first and nightclubs come last, someone who knows the difference between having fun and having priorities, someone who would never, ever text me from a nightclub asking for a divorce. Because that woman is still out there somewhere, dancing to music I can't hear, living a life I don't understand, making choices I would never make. And I'm perfectly fine with that.